Hi, welcome back to Cambridge Inside Out. I'm Judy Nathans.
And I'm Robert Winters.
We'll continue our talks about, zoning, and you went to the Harvard Square.
Yeah, so we'll see what the city
Planning
council
board.
does with the CART petition. Hopefully they'll do
Yeah.
something. We'll take it from there. There was there are a variety of petitions that are being
Yeah,
pushed through,
still.
some of which I think are just going to breeze through. There are some having to do with green building upgrades and allowances for insulation. Those will be 9-0 votes. Everybody's going to be good with those. But there's the Harvard Square zoning petition, which is technically called the Blier petition.
Suzanne Blier,
Suzanne
yeah.
Blier et al. But it's, the wording was actually drafted by Patrick Barrett, who's becoming pretty quickly becoming kind of the guru of urban district type zoning petitions, both for Central Square and now Harvard Square. He's the person you call. And I did go to the planning board meeting about it.
Last week.
Yeah, this past a week ago, and it was really kind of interesting. As expected, there were a lot of kudos given out to the various participants and the petitioners, because basically what it is was they got together people who are not always comfortably being in the same room with each other, and getting them to reach consensus on what they could all be happy with. And Patrick was helpful in that regard, in helping, so they knew what, how to write things and get to it. So, so you got John DiGiovanni and Denise Chilson from the
Harvard
Business
Square
Association. You've got CNBA from the Neighborhood Association. You've got various other characters who were affiliated with that or other, neighborhood associations. And, and they basically, hammered out, maybe it wasn't the grandest of petitions, but the thing is it was all things that everybody could agree on. And, I think Patrick and I sometimes we talk about how it's helpful if we can do our zoning a little more incrementally.
Yeah.
Let's all decide what we can live with. Let's move on that.
But if that hadn't been done, what would guide the building there? I mean, isn't there existing zoning?
Yes, there is. The thing is that there's...
Isn't community development have some vision or all that?
Right, but the thing is the zoning is the zoning. So the thing is, if you're a property owner and the zoning says you can do this, then you can do that, right?
Okay, so people wanted to make it...
To facilitate certain better outcomes. So for example, retail is kind of struggling.
Yes.
For a variety of reasons, not the least of which is, big players from elsewhere who's descending into Cambridge, buying up properties for far more money than they really should be buying properties, causing unsustainable rent levels, and that does change the nature of things. So one of the proposals is, what was done in Central Square as part of the Central Square Restoration Petition is to do an exemption of ground floor retail for any construction, so that you basically move the revenue generation upstairs a bit. So then the presumption would be that the ground floor could be rented at not necessarily the highest
So
price.
is that built into the
Well,
packages though? Because you have a
yes
lot of
and no.
empty storefronts now.
Right.
And I see these developments that have built but they're empty too, and I just don't get it.
Part of it, right now we're in a really heavy duty transition period. There are multiple properties right in smack dab in the middle of Harvard Square.
Also up between Porter and Harvard, there's some. They're
True,
built
but
with the bottoms are empty.
But you've got, people often look to the Curious George building and the one with Dewey,
right,
Cheatham, and Howe
Harvard
upstairs.
Yeah.
So that's, was that Regency Partners now, the Osana building?
I don't
So
know.
Osana Partners, I forget whatever it's called. That building is now, getting all prepped for a major redo.
And it's going to have an internal atrium, right?
Something like that,
Yeah.
yeah. Meanwhile, directly across the street where Nini's Corner was, that whole
Yeah.
building upstairs from there,
Right.
or where Cardulo's is, I think
Well,
those...
isn't Milk and Pizza there, or whatever they call
And
it?
pipizza and
Oh, and
Milk
pizza.
Bar.
Milk
right.
bar, yeah. Not
Milk and
Milk
pizza.
and Pizza is not a good combo.
Milk and cookies. Yeah, there we go. Right.
I haven't been there.
Anyway, so there's that, and I'm sure there'll be other sales as well. Though there are at least some hints that maybe this phase of real estate investment is starting to change a little bit. I don't know really if that's true. But anyway, we are kind of in a sensitive moment. And The difficulty about having zoning that exempts ground floor retail, it's not coupled with any kind of rent controls. So
Right.
there is very much a cultural
Yeah.
component to this. You know, you've got to get the property owners to buy in to the concept in addition to.
But is there anything in writing that says we will keep these rents at so-and-so?
No, and that's a real ticklish point. That's actually a problem even with Central Square. So Mass and Main is able to build a building with
I mean, there's empty stuff over there.
Right. So the thing is that, you know, in principle, they could just ask, ask sky's the limit rents on ground floor stuff. But the thing is that then it'll be harder to get good established tenants in there that we're all going to like. So there was kind of an understanding, but it's not written in stone.
So is that an MOA, a memo of understanding?
You know, I wouldn't even quite put it to that stage. It's more sort of like, do you want to be a good citizen?
Okay, but then wouldn't they want to be a good citizen?
You would like to, I'd like to hope so. But the thing is, that's where, you know, in addition to zoning changes, there needs to be some cultural changes too. In Central Square, we established the Business Improvement District. And with it, there's a lot of buy-in from property owners, a little bit of faith that maybe we all have a shared destiny here, and so maybe we have to ask rents that are kind of part of the building of the better picture, right? So it's not just sort of every man for himself, right?
Yeah.
But there are these difficulties. So, for example, banks oftentimes, and for a time, phone stores,
they have the money.
Were the ones that were willing to sign and the capacity to sign on long-term leases, and the property owner loves it.
Yeah.
Because they've got a guaranteed income stream.
So they like long-term.
They love it. They love it. Yeah. You know, and but the thing is that then you end up with downtown areas like Harvard Square or Central Square, which are lined with banks and used to be phone stores. They seem to be going.
I think we're gonna have cannabis stores though.
We are, yeah. But
I'm sorry, I just
one of the interesting aspects of the Harvard Square zoning petition is that it actually puts banks and cannabis outlets into a similar place.
That's very interesting because right now you can't even have a bank.
But here's the reason why. And by the way, this was not something that was universally accepted by planning board members. Some people seem to think you should give the thumbs up and yay okay to the cannabis places because they're just, you know, they want to do business and great for them.
Really?
But the problem is that the reason, why don't we like banks? And by the way, some planning board members pointed out that some banks have been great community partners and we shouldn't be treating them all like evil predators.
Well, the ones that have been here forever, Cambridge Savings Bank, maybe Citizens.
That's right. So there are some, just because they're a bank doesn't make them sort of evil incarnate.
I think the Bank of America is the one we're talking about.
But the thing is that if you've got banks that consume a lot of street frontage, then you're pretty much deadening that street by just having just plate glass windows of just, you know, bank executives milling about inside. Whereas in a nice downtown area, you have a lot more commerce
going in and out of the building. But if you have a cannabis store, then you have.
The problem is under state law right now,
you can't see inside.
They treat them like speakeasies.
It'd be like a bank. I think they should just combine
like a bank. So in a curious way, banks and cannabis stores are basically being thought of in a similar way because of the way they become essentially, you know, killers of the retail frontage.
Yeah.
But you know, some of the banks are evolving in the way they do business. Some of them are actually doing second floor business. Some of them are more like little cafe banking.
Capital One.
In Central Square. One of the banks, actually, Santander, actually had a lot of big corner frontage, and they downsized into one of the Morris Nagar buildings, the Asa P. Morris building, down, into a much smaller space. But it's adequate for their needs just because of the nature of what banking seems to be becoming. A lot of people doing most of their banking online now.
What's happening to that space then?
I'm not sure what's going to become of it, but the thing is that opens up the other space for a much better use.
Yeah.
Right? So, you know, a lot of this stuff is changing, but, you know, we'll sort of see how it shakes out. But the Harvard Square zoning petition was actually, the planning board members very much acknowledged that, you know, that this was sort of it was a great sign that you've got all these different partners, you know, different parties partnering and agreeing to something, and that I think it bodes well for the petition.
So what would be the biggest change other than trying to not have as many banks? Is it the height or?
I think I'm going to sort of take a pass on that because.
Well, Patrick will be back in a few weeks. You can ask
he
him
can
about
be a
that.
little bit more specific to that. One of the things that I did was very interesting and curious and kind of problematic was there was one planning board member who was saying things like, well, I don't think we should pass anything until we find out the status of the affordable housing overlay proposal. If that's coming back, will passing this zoning petition now preclude some of the things that might be possible then? And I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, I've never heard this logic before, that somehow something that could theoretically come back at some point in the future should therefore derail what are arguably good proposals that are being put forth today. That was, to me, just purely political, and I don't like to think of the planning board members as acting politically.
Well, maybe it was just an innocent question, because actually when I think about it, Harvard Square, what area are we talking about? What's the boundaries? Because I never think of housing there.
Yeah,
But I know there's apartments above some things, but I don't think of it as where people live.
I don't, and I think that
do they want to make this where people live?
I think that most people realize that the whole retail environment in Harvard Square will do better if there are more people actually living in the square.
So then we are going to increase heights then?
I think there will be some increases in heights inevitably, and there should be.
I think that question, to me, sort of is related, although one shouldn't affect the other, but in some sense, if you're talking about increasing housing, here's an area that has not had that.
Right, but the thing...
I don't know how affordable housing would ever even
honestly,
go in there.
You're not going to have... I mean...
Doesn't Gerald Chan own most of it anyway?
Right, so the thing is the one thing if you're thinking about inclusionary units as part of a overall development, that makes total sense, and that has nothing to do with the overlay.
I think that's the only thing that could happen there, frankly.
I'd say that there are 7 members of the planning board and 2 alternates. This is, well, let's just say this is not one of my favorite members of the planning board. So, to me, politics doesn't really belong on the planning board. If you want to be a political person, run for city council.
I don't think anything could be bought in Harvard Square for affordable. That's how I feel. I think inclusionary zoning makes sense. But
that's right. But what you can do is you can say things like, if you want to build additional height in parts where there's actually a lot of one-story buildings still in Harvard Square. A lot, yeah. And the thing is that if you want to go up, then you basically that housing, you have to be housing above a certain height.
But does the petition have that language?
I'm going to have to ask Patrick about that. But so the thing is, but that would really fall under the into the bailiwick of inclusionary zoning, or some sort of super inclusionary zoning where you get a higher requirement, which is basically what was happening with when MIT was doing their south of Main Street zoning several years ago, where they said you can build up, but above a certain height, it's got to be housing. Yeah. So there are some good outcomes, and I think that's an outcome that most everybody could be pretty agreeable to, actually, I think. So anyway, it was interesting. Yeah. It wasn't the be-all end-all. By the way, Harvard Square is getting, after Central Square got its due with the business improvement district and all the attention, seems like there's a bit of a shift back toward Harvard Square, not only because of that zoning petition, but there was an unfortunate fatality at the super crosswalk, so-called.
Which I've never understood that. I never know where to cross there, frankly.
I agree, but
it's brick that defines it. But
I have to say that, and I'm not trying to be mean in saying this, but there are some city departments that they get on these bandwagons every few years where, this is the cool thing today, and this is what we're going to do. In my 4 decades in Cambridge, I've seen Harvard Square reconfigured multiple times, and each time, the planners thought, we've got the secret sauce now. This is going to be the most wonderful thing.
Did you not like it when you first saw it?
I
don't remember what was there before. Was it more defined by paint?
Yeah. I think we probably can do better, but whatever, right now what's trendy are when you hear the rhetoric around town, you hear things like exclusive bus lanes, protected bike lanes,
Oh,
whatever. So
the
that's
River Street meeting, oh
right.
boy.
So that's
Yeah,
part
that-
of
yeah,
the talking points today.
Yeah,
So whether that is in the long term the best plan, I don't know. I've seen all these little bandwagons come through,
yeah,
like little traveling circus shows, and then
Yeah.
everybody hops on, and this is going to be the be all end all, and
No,
then
it's
10
not
years
that,
later,
yeah.
I mean,
Well,
you know, I always like to.
check out Alston and the bus lane that is only, and it's one lane of traffic through the Brighton Street and Harvard Street, and it's a constant
A
problem.
total constant problem.
And so, but
Yeah.
that is I went to the meeting last week of River Street, and they are proposing a bus lane only. And
Yeah.
have only one travel lane coming off.
And they're proposing the same thing heading into
Yeah.
Inman Square as well.
Well, you don't have trucks coming off of the turnpike to
agree.
go in Inman
I
Square,
agree.
so
I
it just,
agree.
I don't, it's,
But the thing
it's
is
a lot
that
to be dealt with here.
that's you know, that's
Yeah.
the pretty new face these days is exclusive bus lanes
Oh, and bike lanes.
and a bike lane. Now, sometimes it's great actually, and sometimes it's not so great. And
Yeah.
but the thing is that if everybody's
It would
just sort
slow
of
traffic down, that's one good thing.
yeah, but you know, listen, if you could slow traffic down, sure, you'll have no fatalities at all, but nobody.
No, but I'm talking about on River Street, I wouldn't mind that, I mean, I've seen
Oh, I
people go
agree.
speeding down that.
Well,
Now, if it was, you had one lane and you have people in front of you, you're not gonna be able to
The
speed.
biggest problem with
Yeah.
River Street for me is always that there was a lot of people who
Yeah.
got off the pike and they're mentally still on the
Yeah,
pike
right.
when they're driving in
But
towards Central
also,
Square on the
I
river.
mean, it was an interesting meeting, but anyway, that's.
Yeah, but
One of the big
you
thing
know,
came up.
you know, Cambridge gets into these little
Yeah.
bandwagon modes where it's sort of like, you know, let's talk up whether it's the bike lane or the protected bus
Mm-hmm.
lanes or super crosswalks. Remember when we started seeing those raised platforms of
Well,
streets?
that was proposed, actually. Somebody
traffic
talked
calming.
about that last night.
Right.
For that area.
But then I remember sometime, maybe 20 years ago, when bump outs were all the rage, and now they're
Oh.
taking all the bump outs were curb extensions near
I know that,
near
Granite
intersections.
Street, and you get that problem around the, you
Right,
don't
but,
even go
but
there.
then those become
Yeah.
incompatible with things
Yeah.
like bicycle infrastructure when you do
Right,
things like that.
or
So,
bus stops, or whatever.
but the thing is,
It's-
at the time,
Yeah.
people were touting those as the be-all, end-all of pedestrian
Well, I think
safety.
Owen O'Riordan brought up that Somerville's dealing with some issues now with the whole thing that they've been working on.
Right, so when they
I
were
don't
putting in
know.
their Beacon Street
Right.
lanes, that was all
Took
based on,
forever.
on this almost religious adherence
Yeah.
to certain beliefs at the
Separate
time. And then by the
facility.
time
Yeah.
they're ready to open, they're going, well, maybe we didn't get that right, you know?
What
But,
is the problem there, do you know?
and actually this kind of relates a little bit.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't know, but
Okay, but I know
um,
it's a problem
but you know,
somewhere,
people
yeah.
who criticize. I mean, I don't have I am decidedly agnostic about what's going to fundamentally happen in Inman Square at this point because
Yeah.
I just don't want to be bothered with it anymore. But
yeah.
but the thing is that you know, some people did point out. I think Councilor Kelly in particular
Yeah.
pointed out that. You know, once the city had decided that it was going to do redesign in this particular way, even if you know, a lot of people came back and said, well, we don't actually think that's going to make it any safer.
Right.
It's also going to be very expensive and it might actually create more
No,
problems than it
yeah.
solves.
No one
But it
wanted to
doesn't
hear
matter because, well, we've already committed to doing a project here.
There's
And,
like no going back.
you know,
They haven't even started.
you know, it's people often use the
Yeah, I think
metaphor
it's a
of
lot
turning
of-
the super
yeah.
tanker. You've got to start turning it
I
while
don't
it's
see
20
how it's
miles
gonna
out.
make it safer.
I don't think it fundamentally will either.
I think what they've done already has made it safer.
I agree.
In maybe a few tweaks,
agree.
but I don't
I
think they
agree.
have to.
Actually, it was a couple of weeks ago at a city council meeting. They're bringing back. It was an order saying they don't just say we'd like to talk to the traffic department about the possibility of putting in a roundabout where Craigie meets Brattle meets Sparks, right? Which is a kind of a weird intersection now. It's sort of three or four major roads, sort of not major, but
Yeah.
traveled roads coming together. And it's a little bizarre the way it's laid out right now. So they said the proposal was to put a roundabout in there.
Oh,
And I'm thinking, well, I kind of like roundabouts in funny ways.
but
But then when you actually
Yeah.
look at it, by the time you've incorporated
Yeah.
all of the protected lanes and this
oh,
and that to
it's
it,
a nightmare.
if you're a cyclist
Yeah.
and you were going through that, in order to get from here to there, you'd have to go dee 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 dee
And they're not gonna do that.
dee dee.
No,
And if
they-
I was on a bicycle, I'm just going right through.
Yeah, yeah.
And so in other words, you have this great theory about this stuff.
Yeah,
This is
but
going to be
you
great.
better look at behavior. Yeah.
You know, so I don't know, but you know, once they get into it, they want to do it. That's the way it's going to go, and we'll see how it goes.
All right.
Anyway,
Okay,
but
more on that later.
right. So, but anyway, there is, I think, just this general phenomenon of like sort of what I would call the bandwagon effect. But here's a kind of a curiosity. It's for those of us who are, and it's actually pointed out to me by James Williamson. For those of us who like to be participants or at least observers in what's going on around town, it's kind of, typically you wouldn't, there are certain things that would be scheduled on a Monday opposite city council meeting, but you wouldn't really want to have something, a meeting taking place Monday, 5:30 or 6, right while the city council meeting was happening.
Usually it's not.
Right, but things like historical commission meetings might meet then, or one of the neighborhood conservation district commissions or two of them will meet on Monday nights, because there's not a whole lot of intersection between what they're doing and what the city council is doing. Okay.
And one is televised, you can see it again.
Yeah, you can do that, right? But I think is it December 5th?
Oh, is it about the
3rd?
urban task force thing?
Right. So the thing is so they've got
Yeah.
the historical commission is taking up the Harvard Square. There's this whole Harvard
kiosk?
Square plan,
Is that
and
the-
then
Oh.
elsewhere in town, there's
Oh,
there's a
there's three
meeting
things
about
then.
Harvard Square kiosk plaza and super crosswalk.
Who's running that meeting?
That one I think
Oh, that's
is
kinda new,
with
'cause it
Public
was
Works and
okay.
CBD and
All
traffic.
right, they brought that
Right?
up, okay.
So
And
the
then,
historical commission is doing one Harvard Square thing,
Yeah.
and this other one is doing there. And then
and
meanwhile,
now we have the urban.
there's this urban the tree.
Is it a report
task
or is it a
force
regular meeting?
at exactly the same time.
Yeah,
Well, I think is now is kind of a report
I
because.
thought they already delivered that, no?
Well, no, I think they've kind of been, but it's
All
a
right.
meeting of the task force.
So it's all December, it's a
And it's-
Thursday, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they're all meeting simultaneously. So if you're
Yeah.
a person who was sort of,
Yeah.
you have to you've got to pick and choose. So I'm kind of hoping they move one of them to
Yeah.
a Wednesday.
Well, I saw, it was kind of cute, Jan and Quentin were saying, okay, well, I'm gonna go to the tree when you go to
You
this.
do, that's right.
Because she
you know,
said she
we'll-
was already gonna go to the super
Yeah,
crosswalk one,
yeah,
I didn't know
so
about the other one, but,
right. So anyway, it gets a little
yeah.
a little hectic.
You know why? Because they wanna have these meetings before the end of the year, and there's just so many times. Look at all those meetings that got canceled
Right, it's
and
true.
then
But
rescheduled.
many of these things here
Yeah.
are actually they're not necessarily tied to council terms.
True,
One of the things that actually
Yeah.
I look forward to at the end of a council term is that unless at least one city councilor asks one of the items on a waiting report for
Oh.
the manager
yeah, this is
to be
your pet
carried
peeve,
over to the
They
next.
all get carried over.
They actually, unless you explicitly pull one to be carried over, then they all expire.
Oh, they do expire. Well, how
Yeah.
come there's like 68 of them on there?
There are actually
Some
some
have gone
going
over.
back to
Yeah. Okay.
2016, when Leland
Wow.
Chung was still on the council, that are still
Jeez.
awaiting report.
So why is that?
In fact, there were 99 items on waiting reports. I was joking we should just sing it to 99 bottles of beer on the
So,
wall.
so what would have to happen? Someone actually has to, it has to
pull
be a
it, right.
counselor?
But here's my
Yeah,
plea. So this is a plea to the city
To who?
manager, Louis.
he can't pull them.
No, he doesn't, but he can respond to
Oh,
them.
he could say
I
this is
said,
no longer,
Can you,
yeah.
so could city staff and Louis DePasquale just basically say, no, we're not going anywhere with this one. Sorry, thank you very much. Done, check. This is in process. This is where it stands, and this is what we're doing. And let's just sort of go through it. I mean, the thing is, there are a lot of different
That's very
departments.
dangerous, isn't it?
Well, but
I
don't be
mean-
chicken. Don't be chicken. The thing is, if the city council are going to get mad at you because you came back and you said we think this is ridiculous, well, take the heat.
Well,
Say it
actually, if
anyway.
a city council really cares about something, they have brought it up again
So
during
that,
this term. So
and that's
that-
what I hope the city
Yeah.
councilors do. I say,
Yeah.
could you please just let them all expire? And if something really matters,
Bring it up
start
again.
fresh
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
January, bring it forth again, right? And just start the clock going. If it's something that city staff was already working on, then it's not like they're
Yeah.
going to just stop working on
Right.
it, right? But start fresh. So that's my
Okay.
plea to the city
You've said-
councilors.
And I know you've said this the last time too, so
Yeah,
you got it
just
now
start
twice.
fresh. When you're getting up around 100
Yeah.
items waiting, and some of them are just really silly. And some of them honestly have already been responded to, and they've become completely moot.
Well,
at this
then isn't
point.
the city manager should be responsible for coming back and saying this is giving
yeah,
a potential
well,
list?
That's why I
Well,
said.
that's what you just said.
I
Okay.
said to
All right.
Louis,
You got to come back and
respond.
just
Come on,
Yeah,
tell
all right.
tell everybody in all the departments.
Either yes or no.
You know,
yeah.
we got here's the month of December. Let's try and
Okay.
close out the year by at least giving a pro forma response
Yeah.
to the things that just to get them out of the way. You know,
Okay.
get some sort of response,
All right.
even if it's a negative response. That would be fine. I mean, there's one. Remember, there was a big controversy about was it wood-fired cooking, right?
Wood-fired stoves.
That's
I
still
think that,
sitting in there.
Yeah, I think Jan's brought that up.
Yeah.
Where is that? Yeah.
I think there's still something in there about early voting on elections, which is they've already filed a home rule petition calling for it, and they've already agreed that maybe
Well, that's
early.
in their calendar items, isn't
Right,
it? Or
but
just-
maybe early
yeah.
voting isn't something the right way to go because
Yeah.
what do they call it? No excuse absentee voting.
Oh, right, yeah.
Seemed to be consensus
Yeah.
that was the way to go. So come on, let's just move along here, will we? You know. Anyway, I kind of hope that efficiency becomes part
Yeah.
of the game plan with
Yeah.
the next council.
Yeah.
You know, and to
Okay,
do
we
that.
only have like a minute left, and I know you wanted to talk about the licensing thing, but
Oh yeah. So
that's got to be a round table.
that really
which
should
will
be,
be,
and
I
it will be
think,
a roundtable at some
probably
time next
soon.
term. But the thing
Yeah.
is the long-awaited report from the city solicitor
Nancy
that just
Glower.
basically points
Glower.
out what I think very expertly done what the role of the license commission is versus the role of the city council, and the role of the license commission as a quote quasi judicial body, right? So basically, what they say is what it is. It is what it is, right? And there's been this controversy, especially about this Upper West bar, whatever, and I think it just basically lays out where the council's role is. What
Well,
the
they did
license
admit
commission
that the
role is.
wrong rule was cited, but even
But even
without
there,
that,
that was,
the
that
aid
was
that
it's,
state, yeah,
it's just
I
a
mean,
minor error
yeah.
ultimately.
But even Mark
Yeah.
McGovern brought up some issues with it. So,
Yeah.
They,
So
they need a round
they'll
table.
work something out. But
Yeah.
anyway, it was a good thing. So.